In this video, we're going to talk about how to calculate the slope of a line from a graph. So slope will tell you the steepness of a line. Slope, when we look at a graph, we can tell as being the vertical change over the horizontal change, or in other words, the rise over the run. You can also think of slope as the change in y over the change in x. So there are 4 types of slope. If a graph looks like it's going up as you look from left to right, it has a positive slope. That is because y increases as x increases. If you look at a graph and it looks like it's going down as you look from left to right, it has a negative slope. That is because y decreases as x increases. If you look like your graph is not changing, that means that it has 0 slope. That is because y does not change as x increases, and the graph of this line will be a horizontal line. If your graph is just going straight up and down, that is an undefined slope. So that means that you have a vertical line as your graph because y is increasing and x does not change. So let's look at some examples. Let's calculate the slope of this line. So as I told you, slope is rise over run, or in other words, the change in y over the change in x. So to figure out the slope, what we're first going to do is we're just going to look at the picture of the graph and predict the value. So I can see as I go from left to right, this graph is going up. So I'm predicting that this graph is going to have a positive slope. I can tell that by just looking at the shape of the graph. Then you're going to find 2 points with integer coordinates. So you can see here 2 points are already labeled for us. So now we're going to sketch a vertical and horizontal path going from one point to the other. So if I imagine I'm going from 3, 1 to 5, 6, I would have to go this direction horizontally, and then I'd have to go this direction vertically. So now we're going to count how many squares we moved over and up to figure out the slope. There's a convention when you're doing this. So if you go to the right, that means you are counting positive. Left is counted as being negative. Similarly, if you go up, that is counted as being positive. And if you go down, that is counted as being negative. So let's think about this. So when we go from 3, 1 to 5, 6, we're always going to go left to right. So when we go to 3, 1 to 5, 6, we're going to go right 2 spaces. So you can see I go right 1, 2. So that means I have plus 2. When I go from 3, 1 to 5, 6, I'm also going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So since I'm going up, that is going to be a plus 5. So when I write my slope will be the rise over the run. Okay, so the rise is 5 because I go up 5. And then that is over the run, which is plus 2. Okay, vertical change over horizontal change. So 5 over 2 gives me a slope of 5 over 2. And that is how you calculate the slope from a graph. Let's try another example. So once again, we're going to predict the value of the slope. So I'm going to look at this graph and I'm going to say, well, it's going down, so I'm going to predict that it has a negative slope. Now I'm going to find 2 points with integer coordinates that are already labeled for us, and I'm going to sketch my horizontal and vertical path. So I'm going to go left to right. So to go from 1, 5 to 4, negative 1, I have to go this direction vertically, and then I'm going this direction horizontally. So now I need to count. So when I go from 1, 5 to 4, negative 1, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Since I'm going down, I'm going to say that is a negative 6. Okay, because remember we said that down is negative. Then I go to the right 1, 2, 3 units. Since I go to the right, that's going to be a plus 3 because remember that right is positive. So now to describe the slope, I'm going to use the rise over the run. So the rise was negative 6, and then the run was positive 3. A negative over positive is going to be a negative, and I have 6 divided by 3, which is negative 2. So my slope equals negative 2, which is, as I predicted, a negative number. So now let's try the slope of this line. So once again, I'm going to take a minute to look at it. It's going down as I go left to right. So I'm predicting that this is going to have a negative slope. So let's find 2 points with integer coordinates. So I'm going to pick this point right here. This point is going to be 0, 5. And I'm going to look for another point, and I'm going to pick this one here, which is 3, 3. Now I need to sketch a path vertically and horizontally going left to right from one point to another. So I'm going to sketch this path. I'm going to go this direction vertically and then this direction horizontally. So in my vertical direction, I go down, 1, 2. Remember, down is negative, so that's going to be -2. Then I'm going to the right, 1, 2, 3. Right is positive, so that's going to be +3. Slope, once again, if you remember, is rise over run. So in this case, my rise is -2 and my run is 3. -2 over +3 is going to be -2 over 3. So my slope is -2 over 3. So a horizontal line, remember, has a slope of 0. So if we look at this, if we think about it, if we're trying to calculate the rise, there is no rise. Okay, so the rise in this graph will be 0. The run in this graph, if we're going from this point to this point, will be 1, 2, 3. So the run will be 0. So 0 divided by 3 will give me the slope of 0. So that is why horizontal lines have a slope of 0. A vertical line will have an undefined slope. Let's look at this example. So if we're calculating the rise over the run, so the rise will be down 1, 2, right? -2. The run, well, there's no horizontal change, so the run will be 0. Remember, I can't define any number divided by 0. Okay, so that is why my slope will be undefined, because it is impossible to divide a number by 0. Well, at least for now, until you get to calculus. So remember, we have a mnemonic to remember this. Okay, so Hoivux is going to help us remember that if we have a horizontal line, so remember that this is what a horizontal line looks like. It will have 0 slope, and it'll be a y equals equation. If we have a vertical line, it's going to look like this. It's going to have an undefined slope, and it's going to have an x equals equation. So let's look at an example. What is the slope of this line? Well, if we look at this, this is a vertical line. So we know from our mnemonic that this is going to have an undefined slope. So if we look at this line, it's asking us to find the slope. So you can see here, this is a horizontal line. So if we think about our mnemonic, a horizontal line is going to have a slope of 0. So let's match the type of slope to the graph, positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So in this first graph, you can see here the rise is positive, the run is positive. So positive over positive is going to give me a positive number, so that means that this has a slope that is positive. Here in this second graph, the rise is negative, and then the run is positive. Negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative, so this graph will have a negative slope. Here it tells me that the rise is 0 and that the run is positive. 0 divided by any number is going to be 0, so this will have 0 slope. In this last example, it says the rise is positive or negative. Okay, so the rise is plus or minus. And then it says that the run is 0. Well, we cannot define any number by 0, so this is going to be an undefined slope. So you can calculate the slope of a line from its graph. You can identify 2 points on the line, and then going from left to right, you can calculate the rise over run, or in other words, the change in y over the change in x. Remember our sign conventions when we do this. If you go up, that is positive, down is negative, right is positive, and left is negative.